Okay, should we start then? It's 5:30, or should we wait a bit more?
I think we can maybe start little by little. I will give you the hosting rights now, so then you are able to admit people on the.
Okay. Well, let's start then. Hello, everyone who came today. My name is Lisa. I'm a manager at We Encourage Community, and the event is organized by We Encourage Community. We Encourage Company. We Talk events are organized to support the company's mission to make the world a better place for women and girls from all around the world. And if this feels close to your heart, I would like to invite you to join our community. I will post the link to it in the chat. I think you can see it there, but it will be a bit later. Today's event format is a discussion between our guest speaker, Joanne Lin, and the founder of We Encourage, Anna Jusila. Feel free to ask questions or give any comments during the discussion. Also, I would like to inform everyone that the event is live streaming on Facebook, and it also will be recorded. I hope it's fine for everyone. And now I give the floor to Anna and Joanne.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for organizing this. This is a great place to meet people and hear experts share their experiences. Just first of all, I think I'm now pinned here, so maybe you want to, Lisa, change the settings so that it's not only my face that's showing when Joanne starts to speak. So our guest here today is Joanne. So much welcome. Thank you for joining. Joanne is a circular economy advocate and a corporate sustainability specialist. What a terrible word for a Finnish-speaking person. Welcome. Please tell more about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Anna, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and share my thoughts with everyone. Yeah, so today I'm going to share some corporate sustainability and from CSR to sustainability in a broader sense. And also I will share some key success factors in CSR initiatives from my own observation. And then I will also share some types of CSR initiatives that companies can do with some business examples. So first, I will just tell a little bit about myself. My experience with CSR started back when I was in Taiwan. I worked at World Vision Taiwan. It's an international nonprofit. We have programs centered around children, like child sponsorship, emergency relief, and also community development. And my role there was corporate engagement. Essentially, I was like the bridge between the World Vision and our corporate partners. So I planned, executed CSR campaigns, and I also do follow-up and maintain relationships with our existing donors, also developing new donors, potential donors. And some examples of our CSR campaigns, it can't be just pure donations, so very, very common. It can also be more complicated campaigns involving the participation of general public. Just to give you an example, I had a client, 7-Eleven. So just imagine K-chain in Finland here. Yeah, so they do donations every year, but besides donations from corporate, they also invite general public to donate to our cause. And how they do it, it's really interesting. So when you go to a convenience store like K kiosk and then you pay your stuff and then you will get some changes. Of course, it's not so applicable here because everybody is using card. But in Taiwan, we still use cash quite a lot. So when we get some change, it's just some cents, some coins. And then there's a box there next to cashier and then people just drop it in. Yeah, even though just some few cents from everybody, but it's really impactful. We generated 1 million euro per year just from all these changes. Yeah, that was really quite powerful. And then through my time,
sorry, I noticed
Sure.
that I'm on mute, and I was just amazed here that that's actually quite a lot of money with just the nickels and pennies that people are just throwing there, and then it can be such an impact for just giving a small amount.
Exactly. It doesn't matter to consumers, it's just few cents, but altogether it adds up a lot to build a community. Yeah, and then throughout my times in World Vision, I started to have more interest in sustainability rather than just social responsibility. So I moved on to corporate sector. I work at Taiwan Mobile. It's one of the leading telecommunication companies with more than 5,000 employees. And my responsibility there was mainly regarding CSR report and Dow Jones Sustainability Index. We call it DJSI, it's easier. And we also have a foundation, corporate foundation. So I also manage several foundation projects, which we partner with nonprofits. And with CSR report and DJSI, all these two reports, they are essentially using ESG, so environmental, social, and governance evaluation framework. And my work was mainly to overseeing the whole process of production of these reports. For example, setting timeline, communicating across departments. Like I will need to ask our merchandising department, like, what have you done to pursue green energy or green supply chain? And very often they'll be like, what are you talking about? Yeah, so
Really?
there's a lot of communication, education. Like I will need to make examples to let them understand what is sustainability, what the sustainability means in their own daily work.
That's actually good because there might be some of our guests who are not so familiar with the concepts. That what is the difference, for example, between corporate social responsibility and sustainability? Could you elaborate a bit about the differences?
Yeah, sure. So actually throughout this experience from nonprofit and corporate side, and then my perception of CSR also has changed. I really believe that a CSR campaign shouldn't be just a standalone project or a one-time PR event. Because back in World Vision, we see that very often, like a company comes to us and then they say, we have this money that we want to donate. And then that's the end of the involvement. Yeah, but companies really have a lot of power to do much more. So I believe that every company should use CSR should make social initiatives part of sustainable business practices that's integrated into their corporate strategy.
That's actually good. So they basically should have CSR practices that kind of tie into the whole sustainability kind of thinking inside the company. And as you mentioned that when you were supervising kind of that what are they doing in the real life, it was somewhat unclear time to time for the people that what are you actually talking about. So it should be a kind of, as you mentioned, a whole strategy and involved in that. And we all know that consumers are demanding more and more this transparency and sustainability from the companies.
Yes, exactly. And now consumers are more conscious because they receive so much information. It's very easy to find out what the company is doing. Yes. And also ESG, so environmental social governance structure, this has become a mainstream approach when evaluating companies' overall performance. So CSR is not just about giving back to the community to compensate for their externalities generated from their businesses. It's also about customer satisfaction, gender and diversity, employee engagement, human rights or labor standards. There's so many aspects included in this social aspect, so societal impact.
Yes, and considering the consumers, this is one way that the companies can actually serve the customers, because if they allow people to, for example, donate through their services and products or other ways they are engaging, so it's kind of like also serving the consumer in a way.
Exactly, yes. And now more than ever, we have seen so many natural disasters, climate change, resource shortage, or regulations change. Environmental issues and social issues are actually quite interlinked. They are not separate issues. So perhaps I can make examples of climate change. Actually, women and girls are most vulnerable to climate change. Yeah, I'm sure Anna also have heard of many real life examples, like in Africa, many countries. Yeah. Women and girls, they are responsible for fetching water for the whole family. And then they have to walk 3 hours in the desert just to find water and then carry water back to home. Yeah, and this long walk every day, it's really exposed them to not just climate, but also danger, like assaults on the way. And because, yes, and girls are responsible for doing this work, they just simply don't have the time to go to school. And then they lose their opportunity to receive proper education that will help them lift themselves out of poverty.
Yeah, that's actually very good that you brought that up, because people don't talk about that much about it. It's very, very sad reality that how much it actually makes an impact towards the girls when we start kind of educating people also on this aspect of climate change, that how it actually, it's not only changing the environment, but it's also changing the conditions in which people are living. And by that, usually the women and girls, and of course children also, they are the ones who suffer most.
Yes. Yeah, so I really think that if companies fail to integrate sustainability into their everyday operation, then this will ultimately affect their fundamental existence. Like if you don't have enough water, if you don't have enough labor, or you use conflict material, this sort of issues, you're more likely to face boycott or face strikes, for example. Yes. On the other hand, if you have a strategic CSR initiative, it can really contribute to companies' long-term success. Perhaps companies could lower their cost in operation or crisis management. In some cases, you can even create new markets. That's very interesting topic. Yes.
Yes.
For example,
Yeah. Through that, please continue.
Yes, for example, Patagonia, they are always a very, very big advocate in environmental practices, but they also have a strong social mission in their company practices. And now they are advocating to reuse your clothes or resell your clothes. They use their own platform for consumers to be able to sell their used Patagonia clothes. And in this way, actually, Patagonia creates new markets.
That's clever, and we all know that actually the one of the biggest problems in clothing industry is that what happens for the clothes afterwards. And yesterday I was actually talking with this great lady from Arizona, United States. She has a social company called Recycle Bras, and she uses her company to give these bras for vulnerable women who are in shelters or in developing countries. So, and she's trying to get companies to understand the value that instead of burning or putting those bras that they are not selling into the landfill, that they should donate those for those girls and ladies who cannot afford them or don't have access to them. So it's a perfect opportunity for companies to do it also for their marketing, because when they do this, it kind of it's creating value for people who see that, okay, they're doing something good. And considering that they would otherwise have it as a waste, they could actually make it profitable. So it's this circular economy. I love it. I love it.
Yes,
it's such
exactly.
a great concept.
Yes, since I moved to Europe, I am more involved in this field of circular economy. And maybe many people will think that this is more, circular economy is more environmental efforts, but actually because of my own experience, so I am very interested in exploring these type of examples, like how to embed social justice within circular economy practices.
Yes, there are so many great opportunities and possibilities to create new innovative companies around these topics. It doesn't have to be only clothing, but it can be furniture, whatever. And there is always people in need, that's for sure.
Yes, exactly. And also by having this sustainable mindset in your daily business operations, you can also gain public's confidence, because essentially you are proving to consumers and investors that you are future-proof, you're resilient, and you're capable of mitigating risks that's ahead of you.
Yeah, that's actually true. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, perhaps shall I move on to 6 key success factors?
I saw that there is something on the chat. Is it a question or a comment, or?
It was a comment. Maybe the person who gave the comment would like to speak up to, or I can also read it.
Yeah, please do read it. And if Isabel wants to elaborate a bit, feel free to open the mic.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can.
Yeah, this is not good mic, but yeah. Hi everybody, I'm Isabel, and I was just curious about this example that you gave about Patagonia, which is a business that is quite activist in terms of social and environmental issues, and they embed these issues into their way of working. And it's more like comments, because CSR is usually, as already mentioned before, it's not part of the core operation of businesses. It's something that is probably on the side. So it's I guess it's a bit different in the case of Patagonia, because they don't do CSR. That's my perspective on what Patagonia actually does, and it's a bit different from CSR.
Good. Thank you, Isabel. Do you want to add something on that, Joanne?
Yes, thank you, Isabel. That's really a great comment, and that's what I always want to communicate. So CSR is not a standalone thing. It should be embedded within the whole business operation from a sustainable mindset. Doesn't matter which aspect. It should be sustainable in terms of environmental, in terms of social, in terms of governance.
So basically, where we are going towards now is the greenwash time is over. So the time when people could have the great, nice slogans and text on the website, that's not enough anymore. People want more. They want the real thing. And this is actually something that goes also for the NGOs. So people, the donors also from the personal individual point of view and from the corporate point of view, they also demand the transparency. Where does it go? How it's actually spent? Where does the money end into? So we need to see what happens. Where is it? We have all the tools. We have the videos. We have the pictures and everything that we can kind of show and give the proof. So now we are heading into the times that the greenwash is over, hopefully, at least. Good. Please move forward, Joanne.
Sure. So from my observations, I would share 3 key success factors in social social responsibility initiatives. So the first one is to have a clear focus and be consistent. I think it's very important that the company is supporting a cause that is relevant to their core competencies, because in this way, companies can really put together their strengths in the best use. And I think companies should also have a consistent message. But just like brand reputation, if you say this, but then you do that, at the end of the day, consumers will see it, and then they will not see you as a credible company. So how to find a clear focus? From my experience in Taiwan Mobile, we use this materiality assessment. So it's an analysis to define who are our company's stakeholders and what issues do they care about and what matters most to the business. And second key success factors is to generate lasting impact. As I said, companies are really powerful in terms of influencing consumers or innovating the new norms. This is a privileged responsibility that we have these resources to use, and we should really try to use these resources and budget to achieve the highest impact as possible. So maybe a company can think about, have you achieved wider audience, or is the influence very in-depth, very relevant, needed, or companies can think of indirect impact. Maybe when a company is doing an initiative, they are not just helping beneficiaries from the community, they are also empowering their employees to know more about the stressing issues around the world.
So basically, this goes back to the basics that I also teach for retailers. It's basically know your customers. Who are you selling to? What are they expecting from you? What are their values? How do you kind of add on them, and how do you kind of surprise them, and how you serve them better? So it's basically you should again go back to the basics and try to figure out the ways your consumers want to be served and how you can add value. So I would like to ask your thoughts and opinions on this, that many corporate owners or small business owners might think that, okay, yeah, it's a nice thing, but it's not about me, or it's not my thing to do, or I'm just a small entrepreneur, it doesn't have anything to do with me. In my opinion, I think it's everyone's business. It can be a competitive advantage. You can have it as a strategy, and you can actually win some big players just by communicating well for the consumers. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I totally agree. It relates to everyone, not just big companies, because we are living in the same world. So you cannot really, a company cannot really separate themselves from the ecosystem. Because
exactly.
in the end, climate change will hit everyone, not just big company.
Yeah.
And actually, for smaller companies, they need to be more prepared to face the challenges, because smaller companies don't have so much money to just protect themselves for a bit longer time.
Yeah, true that. And we have already seen some of the consequences. Now there is floods in Australia, and it's happening. It's kind of around us already. It's now how we survive and cope with that.
Yes. Yes, and the last key success factor that I want to share, I think it's the most important. It's commitment from executives. At least from what I see in all successful front runners in corporate sustainability, CEOs are the biggest advocate. Like Patagonia, I said before. And it actually makes a lot of sense. Just like any other business operations, you cannot go very far without executive support.
Yeah, that's actually true, and especially with the big companies, it's kind of the key. because if you don't have the support, you cannot build it inside the strategy. And if you don't have it in your strategy, you don't have the blueprint that how do we actually execute it. And then most definitely, you don't even have the budget to do anything about it. So you really need to build in. And I really like the fact that you have been emphasizing that it shouldn't be something that you kind of try and glue on top of things. It doesn't work like that. It has to be incorporated and part of the strategy. And I'm a big believer in this, that it will be something that everyone has to take into consideration in the future, because there will be more and more legislation and directives, especially here in EU area. I'm sure that they will be more and more kind of monitoring how, for example, what happens to the waste that your manufacturer is making. And we know that, for example, in Finland already, and I think it's in EU-wide, that we are not allowed to, for example, throw our clothes anymore into the landfill. You have to recycle them. You cannot. It's kind of it's already kind of forbidden. So you have to do something about the waste that you produce.
Yes, that's really great. EU is it's quite advanced in terms of policy regulation.
Yeah.
And we were talking about executive support. So back in Taiwan Mobile, because it's such a big company and with a lot of hierarchy, so we have to really communicate our messages all the way to the top and to help them understand why is this thing important and why sustainability should be embedded, because very often they have 2 minutes to listen to you and then they want to see, okay, but what do I benefit from this?
Yeah, exactly. You have to speak with numbers and mainly with the profitable numbers. So it has to somehow bring something into the value into the company, which is, of course, it's understandable, because the corporates, they have to make sure that they are generating revenue, they have to generate profit so that they are able to keep the operations running, and kind of at the end of the day, those are the ones who are employing people and paying the salaries of those people. So it's kind of understandable that they have to also think about that. But there is also the possibilities to give sanctions and kind of legally make them obliged to do something, because we also know that there is so much kind of things that they do wrong. There is the child labor, there is workers who are not having even the minimum wage, or they are in bad working conditions, or they are just doing bad for the environment. So there are also these type of things, and we as consumers, of course, we have the power. That's the beauty of the kind of our economy, that it's built on market, and we can choose, do we buy or do we do we not? So it's basically, if we say that we don't buy, it's end of the story for the company, because they don't get the money in. So there is also for people, we have the power to do something about these things.
Yes, exactly. So for corporate sustainability employee in the company, it's also very important to deliver these type of indirect impact to executives, to let them know it's not just about numbers. It's not just about numbers this month, this year. It's about long term.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. That's true. And there also has to be kind of the way of the mindset. Why do we actually do this? If it's only for the profit or for the money, it's not long lasting, and it's not kind of as beneficial as it is for bigger and wider, as you mentioned, that it's a strategy and it's part of the who this company actually is and why they do what they do.
I think we have a question from Bianca. Would you like to say it?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thanks all. Thanks Anna, thanks Lisa, thanks Joanne. Joanne, I would like to ask you from your wide experience, of course, in the theme. I would like to have your perception of the SDGs and how it really, how they are really weight within companies.
Sure. Thank you, Bianca, for the question. I really like SDGs, so it's Sustainable Development Goals. So there are, I think, 17 goals, and I think it's a really comprehensive guide to help companies understand what are the stressing issues now globally. So before we were talking about how to find a company's core focus, how do you define what is important? This is also a great start, SDGs. So you can see what is relevant to your business and what can you contribute, in which area you can contribute to. And I think it's very powerful because it's globally used.
Great, thank you.
Yes, that was excellent question, because now we actually have from the UN side, we have the guidelines and we have those goals that we are trying to get towards by 2030. And there is quite specific goals, and then there are even under goals under each of the goals. So there are I'm sure that there is for every business, there is a match. So I encourage people to go and go and check what could be that, because it's also a possibility to kind of also use that again in the marketing and communication, when you tell that we are part of this common and kind of like we unite our forces to do something about these goals. So it's a way to also communicate.
Yes, and I think it's also a great tool to foster collaborations between companies, especially international collaborations, just because we have this unified goal.
That's actually
and collaboration is really important to move things forward faster, because we cannot go very fast if we walk alone, but together we can walk.
Yeah. That's so true. And I think the goal number 17 is about forming partnerships or something like this. So it is really, and especially here in Finland, we are such a small nation. We need people, we need partners. And I have personally noticed that now during the COVID times, the positive thing that has happened because of that, it's so much easier to reach out to people around the globe and host meetings like this, talk with people, and you can create quite a great network around yourself if you just actively participate and ask and engage. So I definitely appreciate your saying.
Yes, and it's so important to just talk with other people, like you said, because then you will know what has worked and what has not worked, because the experience of failure is also very important. That's how we know where we can improve.
Yes, that's so true. That's so true. And if you don't have any failures, it's kind of like you don't grow, because
yes.
you cannot just go all the time towards something that it's magically happening. It means that you are not even trying if you don't fail time to time. So it never should be afraid of that failure. Yeah, true that.
And nowadays we see so many best examples, best practices. But I remember in the Netherlands, so I was living there for 3 years before moving to Finland, and they have an event from Impact Hub Amsterdam. It's an event to talk about your failure in the business. And I think that is so inspiring.
It is actually, even though it sounds a bit weird, but it is actually, yes. Because it kind of gives you the understanding that it's not only you, there are others. They might have been there, done that. True.
Yes.
I think I actually saw a similar event in Finland. I think it was called like Failure Day. So it's nice to know that in different countries they have such initiatives.
Yes, and actually, I was in a podcast featured by Laurent Notin a few months back, and he was talking about failure and things like that. And I started to think about the whole concept of failure, and I started to think that who actually determines failure? How can you fail if you keep getting up? So it's basically you and only you who says that, okay, I'm failed, and it means that you stop trying. At that point you stop trying, and then you failed. And again, still usually that's not even end of the story, because usually then you start doing something else. So it's just temporary, it happens in a moment, and then you just kind of brush your shoulders and keep going. So there is, yeah, the failures
Yes.
are just experiences, life
Yes.
experiences.
It's not a failure. We're just not there yet.
Yes,
But
exactly.
eventually we will.
Yeah, we're moving there. These are just the bumps in the road.
Yes. Shall we move to types of social responsibility initiatives?
Please do.
Yes. So, because there's so many causes there, like we said, just by SDG, there are 17 goals and with sub goals. And today, because we encourage as an organization focusing on women, so I just want to make some examples that's relevant to women empowerment today. And I separate initiatives to internal and external. So we can start from internal initiatives. And I want to highlight just two categories, employees and supply chain. Employees is a really important stakeholder, probably the most important stakeholders for a company. And there are so many things a company can do for the employees. And I think diversity and inclusion policies could be very relevant to women empowerment. I believe in Finland, there are already many companies doing support program to help their female talent to maybe have better experience, have course programs, this type of support development program, or initiatives to support mothers. And I really want to highlight one example from Eileen Fisher. Eileen Fisher is American clothing company, and the founder and CEO is Eileen Fisher herself. She has been very vocal about supporting women and girls. She is always advocating for women's rights and women empowerment. And just because she is always talking about these issues and implement a lot of programs internally and externally for the community, naturally she fosters a culture of inclusion in the company. And this empowers all employees, including women, to just speak up and be themselves.
That sounds great. That sounds super, super great.
Yeah, they have a lot of interesting and inspiring initiatives. So if you guys are interested, you can just go check their website. And next one, I want to talk about supply chain. I think it's also so important and relevant. And I was also saying this child labor, dangerous work environment things. It still happens. It's still very common nowadays, especially for companies that have long supply chain. A company can be headquartered in Finland, but have factories in China, in Vietnam, because these factories are so far away, we don't see them. So we don't really know what's happening there, but it has a lot of issues.
Yes, I don't know if you recall that Finlayson had a campaign. I think it was last fall or something like this, or maybe year before that. They had a campaign. It was kind of a bit controversial, but they wanted to show for the consumers that how easy it is to produce the cheap sheets. So they did a campaign that they produced these cheap sheets, and they kind of made it publicly and made a marketing campaign. And it kind of it's so sad that people went and they bought, like they went crazy and they wanted all of those because they were cheap. So it kind of shows again how we cannot expect that only companies are kind of carrying the responsibility. We also have to remember as consumers that we have the power. So in that sense, when you start acknowledging these things and when you start changing your consuming habits, the companies must change, because they live with your money. So it's kind of you have to also kind of, as a consumer, keep that in mind.
Yes. So it's really important for us consumers to know what is happening in the supply chain. And you said about thin lace, and especially in the fashion industry, like fast fashion, it is very problematic.
It is.
Yes, and it's very, very related to women, because in garment factories, approximately 80% of workers are women. So if companies can deliver a safe and just work environment, it is already a very big step for women empowerment.
Yeah, true that.
Yes, I remember this news about Rana Plaza factory collapse in Bangladesh some years ago. So it was a factory 8-story building, and it just collapsed in 90 seconds. And thousands workers worked there, and more than 1,000 died. And the cause of this collapse is because of poor quality construction of this building. There are just too many floors and too many heavy machineries that this building cannot withstand. And after the incident, there was a report showing that there are 5 garment factories inside this building, and 29 global brands are associated. So they have at least relations with one of the 5 factories.
Yeah, that's kind of the sad reality where we still live nowadays. Even though people know about it, they understand it. Even I'm myself, so this is not to blame anyone, I'm also buying for the unethical clothes and labels, so
Yes.
don't feel offended, but this is just to remind people that this is the reality, and we should also kind of take care of this, to demand that companies do change their policies.
Yes, exactly. It takes time to change. Yes, like you said, even me, I still buy unethical things sometimes, but I do try to think more consciously nowadays every time when I buy something. Yes.
Yes,
so
I have noticed.
Practice.
Yeah, I have noticed that there is a change in the mindset, because when you hear more and when you learn more, it's kind of like the education. Then you start feeling like, okay, it feels I can't do. I rather kind of extend the period when I buy clothes, for example, and I try to do more ethical choices. So that's true.
Yes, and it's also a structural problem, because many people, they simply cannot afford expensive clothes. So that's something not just on consumers, it's also on the government.
Yeah, yep.
Yes.
That's actually true also. And we would. Oh, sorry, Lisa.
Yeah, I would like to comment, because I think I watched a documentary about this accident that Joanne talked about. And I think they'll stop there, that poverty in those countries is a very big problem, because people, they just have no choice. They go there because they need money, they need to provide for the family. So yeah, I think something should be done by the country's government to provide people with good employment. Yeah,
exactly.
And they were talking, what if we eliminate all those factories from those countries? Will it actually also harm the people who live there, because they will have no employment at all?
Yes, that's actually something that I've been talking quite a lot earlier, about the fact that, okay, should the children be on the factories, or should those be on the street? Because for some children, it's actually kind of a better option to be there. Or then of course the company should give them possibility to study, for example, to provide them food and shelter. So this again goes back to the CSR. So if you employ children, how do you actually make them feel better? How do you actually make them grow? How do you empower them and think about the long-term impact? So if we get them out of the street and provide them food and shelter, and then make sure that they don't work too much or something like this, there is a little changes that would lead eventually to the fact that they don't have to work there, because the economy grows and they are able to employ actual more beneficial workers.
Yes, and there are more and more companies that are communicating what they are doing to help to have a more sustainable supply chain. And I want to mention this brand that I like very much. It's Veja. It's a French sneaker company. Maybe you have heard of it, but definitely not from advertising, because they have a no ad policy. It's really interesting. On their website, they stated that 70% of the cost of a normal big sneaker brand is related to advertising. So more than half of the price that we pay goes to advertising. So Veja, they have this mission to don't have any marketing cost, and instead they use this marketing cost to have better material, which is also less harmful for the environment, and also less harmful for the workers who process the material. And they also they can transfer this big chunk of money to paying fair wage to their employees.
That's actually, that's a good example to showcase that sometimes kind of not advertising can actually bring you a lot of visibility.
Yes, exactly. And because they use better material, of course, the cost is higher, but they choose to don't have advertising cost. Instead, they can transfer this cost back to the community. So I think that's a very smart and impactful way.
Actually, yes, that's true. Olga is asking if you could, maybe if you can type the name on the chat, the sneaker firm,
sure.
so people can look up.
Sure. And it's also very interesting. They have been working with one community only, and it's in Brazil, not like in Vietnam or China in the traditional sense. It was because of the material that they need is there, and also the local community can provide a better advantage for them. And they also treat their workers very fairly. They claim that all workers have proper housing with water and electricity. This is already quite something.
It is.
And the housing is not provided by the factory. It's their own housing. And
so they give the house for the, that's great.
No, they don't give the house, but just because they pay fair wage. So these people can afford their own housing. Yes.
That's even better. That's even better. Yeah, because it gives you the ownership, and then you are actually like, that's like the normal procedure to do.
Yes, it should be normal.
It should be normal.
Yes, and these workers have 4 weeks paid holidays and weekends off. This sounds all like very normal to us, but that's quite rare in the fashion industry.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yes, so that was about internal initiatives, what companies can do for their employees and also supply chain. And next, I want to share external initiatives. What can companies do for their community and how can they do it? I think partnering with nonprofits is always a good idea. Corporates don't have to figure out every detail on their own, because nonprofits, they already have the experience and the knowledge. They know who needs help and where to reach them, and the most important, how to help them. So I want to make this this example, it's a brand that I got to know when I was in the Netherlands. It's called Dope. Maybe I can also type it here. So this company, their product is reusable water bottle. So of course, they are trying to address the single plastic use challenge, but they also have a very strong social mission to provide communities with clean water. So they have been partnering with nonprofits that have clean water projects in Nepal. And water is very relevant to women because women have menstruation, women give birth, and during all this time, it's very important to have clean water, sanitized environment. So I think it's also a very nice connection that what they are doing as a business and also the focus that they choose to support. And next, I want to talk about companies can also just raise awareness. For example, this is also a brand that I like very much from the Netherlands also, Yoni. It's a sanitary care product company. So they produce a sustainable organic cotton pads and tampons for women. Yes, and their social mission is to just have a very honest conversation about menstruation, because even now in developed world where we live here, it's very often still an uncomfortable chat.
That's actually true. And we have a podcast coming up with the lady who is a coach for menstruation and how you can kind of find your power by claiming your menstrual power, so to speak, that you understand how your cycle is. So that's very true. That's very true. It's kind of like women have been put into somewhere kind of behind the curtains, and the menstruation is something that it's weird and awkward, even though it's normal. It's
normal cycle of life. Yes.
Yeah, we need
half of our time is in menstruation.
She speaks so beautifully how the cycle is kind of like the time of the years when you have the springtime, and kind of like how you have to start kind of honoring yourself with those cycles. So it's very good.
Yes, I remember when I was a kid in Taiwan, we have these ads for sanitary pads on TV, and then they use this blue liquid, not even red, but blue liquid. Now that I think back, it really makes any sense.
Yeah. We have the same thing here.
Yes, and this is only here, like in Finland or in Taiwan, but in many countries in Africa or in Asia, it's actually a very serious social stigma, menstruation taboo. Women are seen as unclean, even by their family members. If they are having menstruation, maybe they cannot go to a certain area in the house, or they're kept in the kitchen, and girls cannot go to school.
Yes, that's true.
And if girls, they don't go to school for 5 days, 6 days, then they are very likely to just drop out from school because parents will keep them at home to do work.
Yes, and that's usually the time when they kind of latest are being forced into marriage. So when you start your periods, then you will be married off. And in Nepal, they actually have still this chaupadi tradition, where you have to go into this hut, menstrual hut. It's kind of almost like a cave or something like that. And those girls, some of them die because it's freezing and you don't have any electricity or anything. It's kind of like just, we need to talk about this so much more to make people realize that we have to clear the stigma around this topic.
Yeah. So just by saying this issue out loud, Yoni, the company, is already raising awareness and educate consumers to know more. If we know more, and then we have less fear.
Yes, and there is a huge need for for women, and also in developing, not only in developing countries, but also in developed countries who simply cannot afford, for example, to the menstrual pads and things like this. So there is so many opportunities for companies to empower women just by, for example, providing these type of menstrual hygiene items for women.
Yes, I remember some time ago, just this year or end of last year in UK, there was this, I think it's a university, and then they start providing free sanitary pads for every student. And I think that is really, really great.
That's great. And actually, now I came up with a great marketing campaign for some company on the kind of like on the bathrooms in super malls and all of those. There should be these kind of sanitary pads or something available, and you can put your sticker or whatever on those and give those for free. So that would be great.
Yeah.
And I think in Scotland they made those free for women.
Oh, wow, that's so great. Yes. So last example I have here about raising awareness is an ad that I saw just maybe last week. It's from IKEA, Czech Republic, and the name of the ad is The Ghost. So the message is about domestic violence. So they talk about domestic violence. The ad said, domestic violence is real, even if it is not always visible. And it also stated that on the ad, 47% of Czech Republic women have experienced some sort of mental abuse at home. I think that is really a shocking number. That's almost 1 out of 2 people.
Yeah,
so
that's super high, because the global is 1 in 3, so it's even higher in there. Yeah.
Yes. So for them, even home is not a safe environment. I think that is a very big issue. And IKEA, I think they're quite brave to bring this up, because usually they are trying to deliver a positive vibe, a comfortable lifestyle.
Yes.
Yes.
And I know, because what we do, I need to talk about this issue quite a lot. And I have noticed that there is this uncomfortable feeling when people start talking about this, because if 47% of women have experienced this, it means that 47% of men are doing it. So it kind of, you might be talking to a person who is the perpetrator himself, and that's always a bit awkward situation, because you never know who is the one who is actually doing it. And we are living in a culture where we are actually stigmatized with the whole issue, and we are using a lot of blaming of the victim, in a way that when you see, for example, the headlines of newspaper, it's always saying that something just out of nowhere was banging the victim so that she was killed or something like. It never states kind of fully that who was the perpetrator. So there is this kind of almost covering for who is doing it.
Yes, and it's again about the system, because these numbers, they are reported, but there are many people, they are not reporting, because they are just afraid of the consequences.
Yeah, and I think in Finland, it's approximately 10% only that is being reported. And Finland is seen very, very equal country, but we are the second most violent country for women in Europe. So it's kind of like not that visible, or it's not spoken about, and we should be speaking. So I really give kudos to IKEA for bringing this up.
Yes, it's really a powerful message to call for more actions towards ending domestic violence.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes, so that's all the examples that I have today to share with you guys, but maybe I could end it with a quote that I really like. I didn't say it, so disclaimer. I just saw it from somewhere, but I really like it. The quote is, doing fundamentally good, not fractionally better.
That's good. That's super good ending for our discussion. is there any questions from the audience before we wrap up? I think we are all clear. Thank you so much, Joanne, for sharing your experiences and the knowledge and all the great examples. It was super, super nice.
Thank you very much, Anna, for having me here. And thank you for everyone who is listening.
Thank you. And thank you, Lisa,
Thank
for
you.
organizing it.
Of course,
Thank you,
I just
Lisa.
no problem. I just want to mention that we are going to have more of such events in the future. So if you would like to join our community, or if you would like to follow We Encourage work, I will leave some links in the chat. Yeah, so please feel free, and maybe if Anna or Joanne wants to leave their LinkedIn contacts for you
Sure.
to connect,
Sure.
I think that also would be nice.
Copy paste.
So feel free to reach out if there is any questions that come up later on, or if you just want to say hey or whatever. So I will, if I'm able to get into my LinkedIn.
Yeah,
So
so
maybe
I left my LinkedIn already.
wonderful. I think I can now end the live, but maybe I first need to then, yes, I will put my LinkedIn. You can find it, you can find me as when you just type Anna Juusela. I'm now unable to go into my LinkedIn to fetch the link, but feel free to look me up and send me the request. And Lisa, I will need to claim the host, so then I can end the live Facebook.
Okay.